Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Just Two Dads with my co-host, Mr. Sean Francis. I am Brian Altunian. And today, as we kick off Autism Awareness Month, we've got a special guest to talk about, actually, it's another dad in our special needs community doing amazing things for his local community and the broader community as well. So looking forward to getting into today's conversation. Another episode of Just Two Dads. Oh my gosh, I forgot to hit that button. See what happens, Jamiel. All right, here we go. It's live. Here we go. That's so funny. We were all prepped, a little bit of a late jump, and then I wasn't ready. Naturally, that's what happens in our lives. We were just talking about this before you jumped on. Everybody, I'm Brian Altunian. This is Just Two Dads, and today we've got a special guest for you. Before we jump into it, just want to thank you if you're catching us live on Facebook. Put some, feel free to put comments. We'll throw them up on the screen. If you're catching us after the fact on our YouTube channel, so to hit subscribe and please, share with your friends. And if you're hearing us on podcast outlets and WSXM radio down in the U.S. Virgin Islands, thank you for making us part of your listening day. Thank you, Sean Hall in Hawaii, for always keeping us looking pretty and clean and keeping us on track. And we're just going to jump right into it because today, as we launch into Autism Awareness Month, awesome month. You can explain that here in a second. This is a poignant conversation to be had, and as three dads who are involved in our special needs community, looking forward to sharing some brotherhood. So without further ado, we'll throw it over to Sean Francis to say hello and introduce who our guest is, and let's get rolling.
All right. First of all, I just want to say I'm just really so privileged and humbled by the opportunity to have this platform that we have, and to do it the way we do it on our own terms. For instance, it may not be necessary, but I'm going to apologize beforehand. It might inspire some people if my son comes in here or whatever, because he's actually at home today because we are going through serious behavioral issues that are tied into sleep deprivation, and just getting out the door later and later and everything. So he's a little upset about not going to school today. That's a whole nother story. But our guest today is a fellow dad and warrior. So I'm just my bullet points are gonna kind of be all over the place because we live fast-paced lives.
Yep.
So I really haven't had a chance until right now to even digest some of his bio, which is that
it's incredible.
He has a diagnosis of his own. I don't even know what it is. He's going to talk about that. Yep. He is a volunteer firefighter. He has started an organization, an entity that has, I believe it's the first of its event that is a fathers conference that is taking place in the tri-state area, where he is in Philadelphia. And just so appreciative of him being here and being able to connect with him. So welcome to Just Two Dads, Mr. Jamiel Owens.
Thank you. I'm laughing because when you said to digest it, I don't see it as me doing a lot. My wife has other thoughts about that, but I guess looking at it, one can say wow, you've done some tremendous things. But I tell you, and I say this with all honesty, when you're doing things that that are purpose driven for you, that is God given for you, it always seems like you have to do more. So I don't really see myself as doing a lot. I'm seeing what I've been called to and what I have the pleasure of doing. I
can relate.
The pleasure to write books, to be able to be a public servant to the community. That is a pleasure. That's a gift. So thank you, fellas, for having me. I appreciate it. I'm looking forward to this conversation. We got a lot to talk about. So,
we can relate to it because, as you're saying that, it dawned on me, one of the most popular sayings that I subscribe to, and Brian knows this, which is one by Albert Einstein, which says that you can never solve a problem at the same level of consciousness in which it occurs. In other words, if you're in the eye of the storm, it's kind of hard to see. You need to have another objective set of eyes to sit back and look at that which you're involved in. But that's not limited to a problem. When you're solution driven, when you're in the middle of solution and purpose, you have no idea what kind of impact you have on somebody else in your attempt to do
True.
what you're called to do, in your attempt to do the best job you can at just being you.
True.
So, and I had an interaction with someone on the spectrum earlier today where I reminded them, and in doing so, reminded myself, do what you do and be you, because you have no idea how it affects other people.
True.
So, on that note, let's start by, you've already declared that you don't see yourself as something special, you don't see yourself as a hero, but that's actually one of the characteristics of a hero. Heroes don't often acknowledge their cape. So not only are you a hero, but heroes have superpowers, and that's where the origin comes from. So why don't we start with that, because that determines how you face a diagnosis, your introduction to the community, and all those things. So tell us about yourself in that regard and what makes you who you are.
Man, so I let's start with my own diagnosis. So when I say I'm a part of the disability community, I have what is known as the medical terminology, AV fistula on my right leg. So when I was born, the main vein which ran through the entire body to circulate blood from your feet to your head, the portion that is in my right leg was missing. There wasn't any. So therefore, there was no blood going down to that particular region and coming back up, which means I had only seconds, hours at tops to live. So the doctor, approached my mom right as soon as she gave birth, was like, we got a problem, and said, hey, we need to do surgery right now. And she granted them surgery. So the remarkable thing that they actually did was they took one of the smallest veins that is probably on the outskirt of the muscle, and they used a port and actually ported that to be the main vein. So it actually took that vascular vessel and made it larger in order for the blood to circulate. So that's my superpower. So this is actually, it's quite common. I thought, I was the only one, and you'll hear that phrase in our community a long time, a lot. For a long time, I didn't see anybody, with the same characteristics. I wear a stocking or, a compression stocking on my right leg to hold in the pressure that's protruding outwards because of the surgery. And I didn't see anybody that was similar until I would say I was around my 25th birthday. And a gentleman that I was working with, there was a issue with his arm, but he always kept it covered. But then when he uncovered it, I looked at it and I was like, bro, that looks exactly like my leg. I was like, what is that? And he talked to me, and it's the same exact operation that they did for his arm. So I was like,
wow.
Yo, that's crazy. I'm like, I didn't think anybody else had that. And so that's what I say. I'm in the disability space. I'm in this community, and seeing my mom advocating for me, once again, just like you put it, Sean, you don't know until you're out of that area or out of that realm, what the purpose is, and you see all the things that have been lined up for you. So knowing how much she advocated for me at the young age of 17 when she had me, and getting the diagnosis of my son later on in life, it all put together like, you've been conditioned in this. This is you. Like, you are the manual. There's nothing else.
You're anointed.
Basically, this is what you're here for. This is what you are supposed to do. You are not to squander your life trying to figure it out. Your destiny has already been written for you. You just align with it. So I hope that answers your question. It's a lot. Like, I'm so happy to share my story, because I think people need to hear that, especially the men, especially the fathers. Like, you have to overcoming stories like this. It's important.
Definitely, most definitely. Go ahead, Brian.
I was just gonna say, so you were dealing with this all growing up through school, and you were dealing with like sort of the stigma that comes with physical limitations, I'm sure. Yeah. And overcoming all of that. It's fascinating. And then fast forward, if you don't mind, Jamiel, on how you again, your relationships and your child and all of that came about, and then a diagnosis is there as well.
Because I'm sure there was some teasing and bullying involved that came with that kind of stuff too, right?
It was teasing and bullying. I was self-conscious. I partaked in what is the masking of who I really was in order to fit in, the imposter syndrome. So
Right.
I dealt in that, and I have a IQ which is average, but I'm pretty intricate and intelligent in a lot of different things. I excelled in school. So I figured if, people won't see me for who I am physically, my mental will substitute overall for who I am. So I excelled in school, just surpassing everything else that had to do with me physically. Um,
There
Hmm.
you
and
go.
that was a part of that masking. So years down the line and later down the line, unfortunately, a lot of pain and hurt and turbulence in between that time period. But having Shayne with his mom, we were married at the time, and I was even nervous about that. This was my first child. Like I didn't. Everybody else that I was cool with had children, but this was my first child, so I was very nervous. Um,
Hmm.
and then I got excited, but I was just still stressed out because I wasn't done dealing with my own issues personally,
Hmm.
to be
Right.
Sure.
able to care for that child properly. This is even before the diagnosis. So,
Right.
caring for him and just doing the best that I could do every single day, I started to notice some quirky things about, my son Shayne. At that time, me and my wife were going through things, and I disregarded it. I'm like, all right, well, maybe it's just a outcry because we argue so much. And
Hmm.
then I started to know these things keep on the stemming, the repetitive motions, the non-talking, non-observance of Shayne's. That's my son, his name, and I brung it up to my wife at that time, his mother, and I said, I think there's something going on with Shayne, and we need to see what's going on. And at first, she gave me that pushback, but then she started to like come around and say, "Well, yeah, I've been noticing some things. I just didn't say it to you." So Shayne was about three years old, and we took him to CHOP. Funny enough, and they diagnosed him with autism. And when I tell you, I thought my life was over. I thought like that was it. Like I even had thoughts about just leaving, just dropping the bag and just leaving and trying to restart or press that restart button
Yep.
on life and trying to see, where I can actually uh, have what is called a normal child or that
That's
alpha male where
so real, dude.
yeah, that's real.
Let
Yeah,
me
that's
no. I'm not talking about you having the thought. I'm talking about you
with the
sitting here. Yeah, let's peel that back a little bit. I'm talking about you. Well, I am talking about you having the thought, but not that only. That's part of the onion. I'm talking about you having the thought. I'm talking about you then having the testicular bravery to sit here and tell people that you had that thought,
hmm
right? And the fact that that belies everything that we know about you.
hmm
That's why we also have it's incumbent upon us to make sure that we are growing and making the most out of every day, because you wouldn't be who you are today if you weren't a person who is willing to grow and get better. And I have asked myself, sometimes in frustration, I hate to say it, I'm sure at some point in judgment, how could somebody leave? But again, questions are more powerful than statements, especially if they're asked with sincerity. Well, how could somebody leave? Well, what is that person's experience? Because who we are is a product of what we've seen, and that dictates everything that we do, or in some cases, don't do. So I commend you for making what I think are the right choices. Obviously, staying, sharing that here and everything, because I would say too, I'm trying not to enter the ramble zone. I might already be there,
No,
but
no, 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 no. Go ahead. This is
I,
good.
I was just thinking, show me a influencer or person in personal development or guru who speaks with absolution. Here's what you do. Don't ever do this, do that. And I will show you someone who is missing the opportunity to connect with people. Show me someone who says, here's what I've been through. Here's what I've learned. Here's what I'm figuring out. Here's what's worked for me. And I'll show you someone who can connect with more people and potentially make a greater difference in other people's lives. So kudos eternal to you for doing all of that.
Mm. I mean, there's one thing I want to keep in mind too when you said like you're open. Like you could talk about this. And I was recently watching an episode with Tim Ross. Everybody knows who he is, The Basement. And he said, you know, the best form of therapy is actually being able to tell your story openly, being transparent. So people only assume therapy is speaking to someone else, a doctor, a professional, and getting that off their chest. Going outside, art therapy, photography therapy, whatever the case, shopping therapy. But
Right.
true therapy, because that's a heavy laden stress that you're bearing on your soul, on your body, on your mind. The true
Exactly.
therapy for me, so I'm not only engaging in uplifting other people when I talk about my life, but I'm giving therapy to myself every single time that I'm being open and being able to express this. And this is the beauty of the autism community, because we do this. We do this sometimes. A lot of us, we don't, because we're not there yet. We're not at that level where we can speak, and that's okay. But a lot of us are. It's just, you know, this community is so vast, it's worldwide. So when I hear the other stories, and I, you know, get involved with other parents, and I hear about what they're doing and how they started up from the mud too, and they're getting everything together, I'm like, look, I'm on board. What do you need help with? I'm here for you.
Right.
Like, how can I support you? Because I want to support their therapy. I want to support them getting over that hump of life, because it's not saying it's a hump because of the child. It's an obstacle of life. That's all it is.
Yes, and here's the thing too.
It's interesting though. Let me just say this.
Brian, go ahead.
In the point of sharing your story, when you share that story openly and in public, people hear the story, and a lot of times they'll hear themselves in that story, some aspect of it, and that relatability is what, you know, makes people. It actually serves so many other folks, because they're like, and what would I do in that situation? And they just validate the fact that I actually had that thought as well at some point. And, you know, how did you do it something different than I? So it creates that, you know, that blend.
That's what this is all about. Anything that reminds people that they're not alone. And here's the thing: the therapy is taking place, whether one knows it or not. How well you see it just depends on how high your level of consciousness is. There's a reason why one of my favorite books is one by Dr. Shad Helmstetter, which is entitled "What to Say When You Talk to Yourself," or when talking to yourself. Because people think that, well, the notion of talking to yourself is crazy. Well, you're speaking to yourself every day,
constantly,
right? You're speaking to yourself out loud, but the loudest words are the ones that are said subconsciously. And if your consciousness isn't high, you don't even realize what you're carrying or saying, because it's on such autopilot. So when consciousness is raised, you realize what it is that you're being said. And then language reveals consciousness also. So it is a work in progress. And if we live to be 500, we should never tire of the work of bettering ourselves. So in terms of chronology, I was about to make up a word and say chronology, but that's not a word. That's not a word. I'm surprised Brian's keeping a straight face as I attempt to make up a word. Usually that cracks him up. But anyway, in terms of chronology,
I keep a list. I have a list.
Okay. Sometimes I come up with some good ones though, and they fit, like, you know. But that's why I always say too, this show, I'm grateful for the show, because I'm now convinced, you know, I find myself with this show, and I know that I've been misdiagnosed, and the things that make me quirky, I get closer to finding out what it is from a diagnosis standpoint by doing the show. But in terms of chronology, let's keep with that. You mentioned, if you're willing to go there, you mentioned your wife at the time, Shayne's mom at the time, things of that sort. So tell us where things are there and what that part of the story is like, as you know, in terms of dealing with the diagnosis and the battles of life, you know, as a couple.
So back then, you know, when we were married, you know, after the diagnosis, I processed that as an I issue. So, you know, why did you do this to me, God? I don't deserve this. I should have a normal son. I can tell you specifically that after that diagnosis we received, I never, not one time, stopped and said, babe, honey, how are you? Is there anything that I can do to support you? Is there anything that I can do to help you understand what the next steps are and our understanding of the child? I was too focused on processing how this hurt my ego and pride. So that was the first crack
It's a huge acknowledgement, by the way. That's a huge.
That's what I'm saying.
It's a huge acknowledgement. Another one. Another huge acknowledgement. Love that. Because it's real. It's real for all of us. Like we've all the guys.
It's
all
real.
All been through this.
And I had to realize this instead of pointing the finger years later and saying, no, I had to step back and be like, bro, I never really acknowledged her. We were in the same area and heard the same news and never not once acknowledged what she was feeling as a mother. Did she blame herself? Did she look at me differently? Did she look at our son differently? Did she how did she feel internally as far as like her next steps and her goals? I didn't even take any of that consideration because I separated myself, because as a man we are conditioned to fix it. But I'm given information saying you can't fix this. You can't. I'm telling you as a professional, you can't fix this. So that was my pride and ego that just got shut down. And then as that got shut down, I started to push away from my family. I didn't even acknowledge my son. I can tell you, once again, ride home was completely quiet. My son called for me a couple times. I did not respond to him. I simply got out the car when we arrived home and I just walked in the house. I didn't even take him out the car. I didn't embrace him. I didn't embrace her. I didn't do any of that. And so go ahead.
So I'm just going to say, so again, the onion being revealed. So earlier you talked about you had thoughts of leaving. Now you didn't formally, physically leave the family, leave the relationship, but essentially you left.
Yeah. I was already checked out. I was already gone. And then, what we do normally, what people do, both male and female, is we tried to dull the pain in other ways. So I would go out, I would party and get belligerent, drunk. I would sit there, holler at other chicks. I would talk to women and do whatever I needed to do to get away from this reality, which was my family at the time. So ultimately, that caused the split and a rift between my marriage that ultimately ended in divorce. And in that time of divorce, it was me really just doing me. The first 2 years of Shayne's life, I wasn't around because his mom, after the divorce, of course, there's a lot of emotion with that. She just picked up and left out of Philadelphia. She just picked up and left. And she didn't tell me where she was. She didn't tell me where my son was. She wouldn't answer my calls, nothing. So I had to calm myself down. The reason being is because, for one, I'm former law enforcement. I have a certification which requires I can carry a lethal weapon. I had a license to carry. All these things saying, don't go over that house. Don't find her because you're going to be in the wrong. And obviously I had people that were intricate in my life, friends that weren't in it, but they can at least tell me the surface level, like, that's a bad idea. You're going to end up in jail if you do anything. So chill out. So I chill. And I'm going to be, congruent with this part. The only reason why I found out where my son was and what he was doing and how he was because she called me one day and she said, I need you to come see your son. And I'm thinking something's wrong. And she's like, no, because your son just called the trash man daddy. Oh my. And I said, are you serious? And she said, yeah. And I said, I'm on my way. So I dropped everything. I went up there. I saw him. She said, listen, for now on, you can come up here and see him, but you can't come inside my house. You will have to sit here or you will have to take him somewhere. I will have to know all the details. That's how we do until we didn't even hit the court system yet before we go into court. I said, that's fine. I'm just happy to be around. So that's how we started. Go ahead.
Let's do something right here.
Go ahead.
Assuming that your relationship with her is such that you guys, and it seems like it, are peaceful, cordial, and in touch, and she's going to hear this.
Yeah.
I want to give her props where it is due.
Oh yeah.
Because she could take the road known as Bitterville, right? And just simply tell Shayne, no, baby, that's not your daddy. And show him a picture of you, whatever have you.
Yeah.
She picked up the phone and called you, and then she still put boundaries in place to protect her child. This is an example of two obviously good people that just not only couldn't work it out, but each taking responsibility for situations. And here's the value in your being here today. I'm not a clinician nor a therapist, but my wheels are turning in terms of how possible it is for us to save ourselves if we deal with who we are and our deficiencies before stuff takes place. Because everybody is filled with holes. Every last one of us. I don't care how big your name is. I don't care how many titles you got next to your name. I don't care how much money you make. I don't care how many home runs you hit, where you fall in terms of Hall of Fame or anything. But part of the human experience is imperfection, and part of that means that we all have holes. Some of us fill them with bad relationships. Some of us fill them with drugs, gambling, sex, whatever the case might be. But if we make an attempt to fill those things beforehand, we come to the table of diagnosis a lot more prepared to deal with things. And what you're doing and your wife and your work is an extension of her bravery as well. Props all around. And I'm just, I'm grateful for that.
Listen, not only that, fast forward to now where we're at, we've been through the court system. That was another emotional, it was spitefulness there. So it was a lot. Court system can induce that. That's another thing I'm trying to work on is the understanding of the judges and the legal proceedings about a special needs child and the need and the want for both parents to be in their life equally. But that's a whole nother topic. My son's mom, and I obviously want to respect her privacy, so I'm not going to mention her name, and her boyfriend that my son stays with full time. I get him every week or every other weekend, however see fit, as much as I possibly can. I give props to them consistently. And the reason why is because I've literally seen this other man where, once again, this is an issue with me. If I puffed out my chest and was like, yo, you're not going to be calling my son your son because you ain't his dad. But I've seen this man tell me, hey, I love Shayne like he is my own, and that's my child. They have another child together, a toddler, but he's like, this is my son too, and I care for him, and I respect him every single time. I give him a handshake. We talk. Even when there's problems, because there's always going to be problems between me and Shayne's mom. But he's the person to be like, hey, listen, I heard there's some problems going on. What's going on with you guys? Talk to me. So he can kind of help mitigate that. But he also understands his place too, whereas things like that's between you two guys. I'm gonna step out, but that's between you two. So I definitely have to give props to his mom and her boyfriend, for them being in Shayne's life as well as me, because I can do it over here, and she could do whatever she wanted to do and be a little bit more scandalous than the person that she is and have random men around my son. She's not that type of person. So definitely that's another part of me. With me being able to tell this, it's kind of a salutation to her, because a lot of this she had to actually teach me through her actions on how to be a man. So I've had an opportunity to grow into a man in fatherhood, from the disappointments, from the losses, from the trials and tribulations I've been through just with his mom. And then I had to learn through life in general from my background. And then I had to learn now in my marriage down Matt with our toddler. So now I'm getting a chance to learn and still learning. I don't have this together, but I'm still learning. And the most effective part of this right now is I've been around since day one with my son now, my second son now. I've been around since day one. And I can tell you, it has really changed the narrative of the amount of forgiveness I want from Shayne for me being absent and want from his mom from being absent, but the amount of forgiveness that I'm giving out to other fathers who may not have been there for either the first years or still not there. I want to give them the forgiveness to say, hey, I forgive you. I do.
Yeah.
But let me ask you something. This is what I need to do.
Yeah. Let me ask you something. You talked about your mom's example, her showing you what it's like to be a warrior, but especially since we're talking about the topic of fatherhood, what is your relationship like, and what was the influence like of your father in your life growing up?
Good question. So shout out to my dad. he was not in my life until age 24 when he found me.
Now let me
So
ask you this.
yeah,
Let me ask you this,
yeah,
because I sense it. This is again a part of growing and everything. I sense that I picked up on it at that moment. I was like, wait a minute. Sometimes what's not said is louder than what is said. What role, if any, do you think that played in your ability or the manner in which you fathered, especially initially with Shayne?
it played so much because it came from his mouth. And this, I'll tell you the conversation we had, and I tell you exactly because I remember it. I was living on my own. I've been on my own since 16. So I was leaving to go to work, and a phone call came through, and it was a cousin of mine. And she's like, "You don't know me, but I'm your cousin." And I'm like, "Okay." And she's like, I was ignorant. I was ignorant as I don't know what. I was I was crazy. And I was like, "Okay, and I got to go to work." And she's like, "Your dad's looking for you." And I paused, and I'm like, "Okay, well, tell him to call me right now before I go to work." So she's like, "Okay." She hung up. My dad called me, and this is what he said. He said, "Listen, we could talk about why I left if you want to, but I would be more than humbled and thankful if you took me into your life now, and we can talk about anything. You can ask me anything, but I want to be a part of your life." And this was the answer that I gave, even though I was a smart ass. Excuse me for my language. I was smart, and
That's okay.
I sat there and said, if you can be here now, that's all that matters. I will never ask you why you left. And I never did. We met up after that. He lived in Ohio. I drove over there. We met up. He met my son. He met Shayne. He met, my wife at the time. And we've been tighter than anything ever since then. And I
Wow.
never once asked him his reason why. See, the problem is that we kind of want to ask people, why did you do this? Instead of saying, hey, I understand it can be tough. How can we get you moving forward? You're going to ultimately tell me the reason why, either in your words or your
For
actions.
your
I'm going to
actions.
see it. I'm going to see the reason why, but I'm thinking about moving forward. So I don't want to press on the back. I want to acknowledge it. Yes, you wasn't there, but I want to say, okay, so what now? How are we going to be together now? How are we going to form this relationship from this point on? And those conversations are either going to come up naturally or not come up at all.
How
That's
old were you at the time?
I was 23, 24.
Okay.
23,
How
24.
old are you now, Jamiel? How old are you now?
Oh man, I'm a young 42.
Okay, just to get because
Yeah,
Shayne is now how old?
he just turned 16 last
Yeah,
Friday. Yeah.
just to give people
Okay.
context of age wise.
Here's the reason. Here's the
Why?
reason why. Here's the reason why I asked that. Again, you're so busy doing you. You're in the center of the storm. You don't have the perspective that I or Brian or anybody else sitting back on the outside might see. That's not normal or average to have that level of consciousness at under the age of 25,
Yeah.
because that means that you're deciding that what's more important is making the very most out of our time together. And I'm going to find out either way why you left if we're together. That's not average. Let me ask you this. That's a bad habit I have. Every time I ask a question, I say, let me ask you this.
Oh.
What was your understanding? So obviously you weren't told why he left. What was your understanding of where he was or anything like that, that your mom, what explanation, if anything, did your mom give you with regard to his absence?
So for you to kind of piece this together, we're going to dive a little bit deeper into my mom. So my mom raised me obviously until the age of 16. Around 15, she actually um, developed schizophrenia and depression. What happened was my mom literally did not trust me and she kicked me out. I remember sleeping on my porch, sleeping on friends' couches because she wouldn't trust me to be back in the house. I had to break into my house to get a change of clothes, to get some items, to be over these friends' house because of this. So then she went missing on the streets with my little brother, because I had a little brother also, through her and another guy that she didn't marry, but she was with, and they just went missing. And unfortunately, the police found her, and arrested her because she tried to assault an officer because she was obviously under psychosis.
That's part of mental illness. Yeah, that
Yeah.
happens. Yeah.
So my mom actually, from 16 on to when I found her in 2014, she lived on the streets all those years. She did take a break from her psychosis because she was arrested again, and she took the right medication, the right balance of medication. She was getting her life on track. My little brother, she actually gained rights to my brother again, so parental rights. He lived with her, and everything was cool. Seems like my mom was doing better. She got back to work. She was like on point, and then something set her off again, and that was the last time she was on the streets. So when I'm gonna give you a little context. When I found my mom, I found my mom because she was locked up in Jersey. The mental hospital, the state hospital, called me. They said, "Hi, my name is such and such. We have your mom here." And I'm excited, like, "Yo, you got my mom here?" Like, yeah, like where she's at. I'm on my way. And she's like, "Before you do that, I think you need to talk to your mom." And then my mom came on and she says, "Hey," and I knew it was something wrong. And she's like, "I have stage 4 cancer. I have 3 months to live." And I said, "What?" And it was like everything just stopped. And I'm like, "I'm on my way." And I went over there, and she had 3 months exactly. I spent every day with her for 3 months, every single day. There was even one time where they thought she had TB. And I was like, "I don't care. I don't give a F. I'm going in that room." And I went in that room and I sat with her. And she even looked at me, was like, "Why are you in here?" And I'm like, "I'm not leaving you." Like every day. So.
And how old were you at this time, Jamiel, when this was happening?
Shame. This had to have been 27, 28.
Okay, so yeah, so this is after your relationship, after Shayne's born, you're
32. I was 32 because it was 10 years ago.
Wow.
I was 32.
Yeah, so after Shayne's birth, and you're reuniting with your dad.
So the reason why I mention all this is because at the time my dad called, my mom wasn't nowhere to be found. So at that moment, even though I was stuck in my ignorance, I still had the heart of God. And what I mean by that is that my heart, we're made in his likeness and we're made in his image. My heart was like, you can't tell this man who I have put in your position, put in your way because you need somebody, you can't tell him no. Because if you do, this path is, all our paths are promised to be negative. It's going to be hard, but your path is going to be even harder. And I'm telling you, at that moment, that's exactly what came out. I don't care about it. I just want you here from now on. That was literally God saying, I'm about to take this parent from you for a long time, and you're going to need one. And he spoke to my dad's heart and was like, you need to go find this in a whole nother state. You need to go find this man and be there. Just be there. And I will handle the rest. And he literally did.
Look, man.
Yeah. As somebody who didn't know my biological father till I was 27, there's a lot of that story that I share with you. So hearing you talk about it, it resonates for me because I get it. We don't realize how powerful that connection is, and in absence, sometimes you don't know it until it's restored, and you're like, oh man, this is what. Oh wait, I look just like you. Oh, I got this same issue you have. It now explains what my child's going through. Like it gives so many more answers when you can make that connection. God bless. That's such a good, such a great story, and I'm so happy for you. And again, how that plays into your fatherhood and your forgiveness, in a way you're forgiving him as well, right? Forgive your mom for the stuff that she did to you. But more importantly, you're forgiving yourself for all of the stuff that you processed during that time frame. And that's, such a critical thing for us all to do as well. Give ourselves grace give the folks around us grace. We all, the point that you were making earlier, Sean's like, we all have those issues. Wouldn't it be great if we could solve them all before they show up? That doesn't happen. Sometimes it just doesn't happen. Things show up in our lives to give us that perspective of an appreciation. So, such a great story, Jamiel. This is amazing. And we're going to run out of time to talk about all the great stuff you're doing because
listen. Shayne was
it's all good.
Shayne was plugged, but this is my first book. So it's called, it's blurry. It's called Life is a Puzzle. Guy gave you a cheat sheet. I'll send you the info. It's on Amazon.
Where's it available?
It's on Amazon.
We're gonna put it in the show notes and the link anyway. We're gonna make sure we do that.
I'm gonna tell you guys the reason why this is so powerful. It talks about everything. But I was working a job that I didn't like, and I quit that job without my wife now knowing, and she was mad. I wrote this book in 1 week. I had it edit the next week. It took me 2 weeks total to self-publish this book. 1 week I wrote this book, and it was literally everything spilling out of me, just like, hey, say this, you got to do this. It literally is a really a good look into my life and how I overcame everything. It's crazy. So definitely, I'll send you guys some copies, man. But everybody definitely support us on Amazon. I wrote 7 books in 1 year, but this is just one of them. But I look at it and like I could sit here and of course we're emotional people. You lose your mom, you cry. She was my best friend. She literally was, and I was like, either I can do that, or I can continue what she wanted me to do, what God ultimately wanted me to do, but never forget her by always talking about her and our relationship and the things that she actually partaked in because of her mental state, and how we spent the most important thing, how I got to know her more in those 3 months than I did in that 16 years of life. 3 months compared to 16 years. I discovered so much more about my mom, and it made sense. It made sense for when my dad came into my life. Like, it made perfect sense. Then I started to see, oh, that was God. He literally has me. He literally has me in his scope, and he is protecting my heart. So then that started to open up me to understand the importance of spirituality and Shayne. There is a link here. Now I'm starting to see it like, okay, now this is something I need to focus on. So now I started to just do everything from my heart. So all those things that were destined to tear me down, it was stripping away from it. And it was like, now I have to love on people that I'd never met before.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah. Hey, hang on. Before we jump, I just want to say one thing. In Judaism, when somebody passes away, the comment that we make always is, may his memory be, or may her memory be a blessing. And some people don't like, what does that even mean? What you just described is exactly what that means. Our memories of our loved ones who have passed on are the things that continue to bless us. The memories of our time together, the experiences together, are what bless us and remind us that their lives weren't the kicking you out of the house, weren't the being lost on the street, being arrested. None of that. It was your memories together. That's just circumstance. It was that's a blessing to you that continues to bless your life and those around you and those that are impacted, which is a perfect segue into what you're doing now, because you're taking all of this. You've got God on your shoulder. God help you write these books, right? God's on your shoulder.
Yeah, he's right there. He's writing it,
pushing you. Just got to hit you in the back of the head. Keep going.
Yeah,
let's go.
But it's good you mentioned that, because this is not a Christian thing or the Judaism thing. This is a love thing. This is God. Yeah. This is us. This is
faith. This is greater than us. Yes,
it's all of us. So I'm glad to hear that. Now I've learned something about your spiritual background that I can hold on and cherish. So when I interact with another person that practice Judaism, I hear that's great conversation. They'll hear my story and they'll be like, yo, this is what happened in my life. And I can mention that, hey, a friend of mine mentioned this, right? And they'll be like, yeah, now I'm connecting our stories. I'm doing advocacy work. Now I'm passing the torch and uplifting somebody so different from me that they probably would have never met me or even paid 2 cents to me if I was still in the mindset that I was in my early life. But now I'm past that. So now I'm building a community. I'm building advocacy. I'm building other men, other women up. And this is my purpose. That's what aligns. Listen, I appreciate that nugget. Brian, I really do. Seriously, because now it gives me strength to sit there and be like, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. Because other people is now realizing this even in their culture. Like, oh, he said that? Like, this is exactly what this means. Let me school you on exactly what this means in my culture. Now I'm building that foundation for other people to learn together. You know what I'm saying? Like absolutely that's amazing.
In a way, if we're all paying attention, we're all prophets of God to some degree, right? We just gotta put it out there for folks to connect. Shayne, you were gonna ask Jamiel as we're getting closer to the end of our time, and I want
and actually we can, if we go,
a little long.
We go
okay.
A little long because of our start time. We can do that too. But tell us about in terms of purpose and everything. Tell us about the event, and then let us know if there's a site as well to be able to register for the event, because you and I talked about this undertaking for the event. So I want you to talk about, for anybody that's listening and trying to figure out their purpose and doing something greater than themselves, which we're always trying to do.
We're always trying
share with our audience the conversation that you and I had about how the event came to be, what the event is, and then we can talk about where people can register for it, because the story and the path is as valuable as the event itself.
Exactly. So the event that we're speaking about is the first ever Autism Fathers Conference in the tri-state areas in Philadelphia. It is April 6th, 2024, from doors open at 9 until 2 p.m. It's at Aspira Educational Campus. That's the old Cardinal Doherty building for y'all people who are Philly peeps that know, at 6301 North 2nd Street in Philadelphia. And this came about because this was a dream of mine 2 years ago. So I've been advocating since 2014, literally the same year my mom passed away. I was out there advocating because I knew the pain would help me in that sense. And just 2 years ago, I'm sitting there and I'm like, I want this event to happen. I'm the family relations coordinator at the Center for Autism Research at CHOP. My visibility and my network grew because of my growth in this position. And I'm like, this is the time to do this. This is the time to actually uplift and inspire other autism fathers of all ethnic backgrounds, all socioeconomic statuses, to come together into a building and have this event. And I literally used to have dreams until I started forming it, of being in a building, being on a stage, and I'm just seeing mass amounts of men in the audience, and they're not just listening to me because they have to, but they're listening to me because they feel like I'm not alone. Like I have somebody to understand me. Like this is something that they love to be a part of every single year. So I put it together. I've had 19 people on the planning committee from all walks of life, with all different organizations, specifically for the neurodiverse community. We're just happy and humble. It's been a lot of work. You see the bags under my eyes. I've been planning this, and I can't wait. I just told my wife April 6th. I can't wait till afterwards because, excuse me, because I am going to relax a little bit and take a break from events. But I want to show you this. So this is, and I hate that the blur is coming in. This is a challenge coin. That's the challenge coin that we're going to give every attendee. And this is something to remind each one of those attendees, you matter, you are acknowledged, and you have a community. Everybody that has this is now a part of your community. Consider them family. And this is something that you will get at being a part of this actual event. And I designed this. I designed literally what I mean. I put my heart and soul into this. I put my heart and soul into this because I can get on here and I can say, yeah, I help fathers and I'm an awesome father. And, I want to make sure fathers are heard. But there's a difference between just talking about it and actually doing the work. Like it's
For sure.
You can't just be talking the talk. And if you go into the community, you scared to interact with people who live this every single day. I live this every single day. I need to make sure the voices of those people who live this every day are exalted, but also too, they're educated. So I'm bringing all the resources to them. I'm not saying come downtown where there's no parking. You got to pay $80 for parking. You got to worry about food. I'm saying I'm going to come to you. We have 70 resource tables. I'm going to bring the resources to you. I'm going to feed you not only breakfast, but lunch. Absolutely. All that's included. And then I'm going to give you gifts, tokens of our appreciation for being there.
Let me ask you this. Let me ask you as you're putting this together. First of all, for those that are not in the Philadelphia area, CHOP is Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay,
I'm sorry. CHOPS is Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. I'm sorry.
That's
I keep on forgetting some people don't know the acronym a lot of times.
Yeah, I just learned it myself. People are like, wait a minute, he's selling beef there too? What's going on? And as you can tell, we do this show live with no filter, which is why you hear the emergency in the background. But the topic is emergent in nature, to say the least. So the other thing is, okay, so you got this great thing going on. Somebody out there decides, I want to make a difference. I want to be an advocate. I responded to a post of a guy who I know is going to be a guest on the show earlier. He posted that sometimes he feels like he's not as effective as other people in terms of being an advocate. He's on the spectrum and he's an accomplished author. So we all feel like we're not enough. Anything that lets us know what we have in common and reminds us that we are enough is immeasurable in value. So someone that's sitting out there that decides that they want to put on an event. We did a summit. It was virtual. We're looking at doing another one, and we keep trying to think of where do we get the most of our return on our investment in terms of our time? Where can we effectively add the most value? So you're always trying to tweak how you do an event. Someone that might want to do something like that, tell us about how you got to the point, because you just broke down some stuff that you just spit out there in terms of feeding people and all of that's not an easy thing. And you have some sponsors, some entities that have come together to contribute to make that happen. Tell us how you got that part accomplished.
Transparency. People that I've been doing outreach for a year now in this position, and every person that I've reached out to knows my story. So they know.
So in other words, just ask. Closed mouths don't get fed. Ask,
but make sure they know your reason why. Make sure they know, like, hey, the reason why I'm doing this is because I'm affected personally, and my purpose and my passion is to help educate others, and let them know, a little bit about your background. That's all I did. I sent out a generalized letterhead, just spilling out everything feeling wise on why they should be a part of this monumental event. And they felt it, they acknowledged it, and they said, I want to be a part of this event. And I raised $10,000 by myself.
Excellent.
Beautiful.
Oh my God. I raised it on the strength that nobody would want for anything at this event. Everything is covered.
So amazing.
Okay.
So and I hope there's a way that you're gonna be able to either, I don't want to say live stream it or post some stuff about this on social
have some
media
clips or something.
Oh yeah. I got a video team. I worked with this gentleman. He's like family to me. He owns his own company, so he'll be making video content and everything. We're going to have all of that up because we want to make sure that we could possibly bring this in again next year.
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to say. It's a great thing to do to give people a guide of what's coming. It's this Saturday in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
Autism Fathers Conference Resource Fair. Go ahead,
Sean. You're a problem, Jamiel. I'm going to tell you why.
Yeah, no kidding.
Okay.
I know what you're saying.
When we do our when we post this show, and we have so the episode is live now on Facebook. It's available on all platforms. It's on WSDX AM radio in the U.S. Virgin Islands, where I'm originally from, later on today, and then on all most podcast platforms. And when it's posted, there's usually an audio clip about maybe like 2 minutes.
Okay.
I usually do that. The problem I am going to have is if I have all these nuggets before me and I can only share a portion of, how am I going to determine which ones to share? And what I'm going to tell people is, we've been blessed to have some amazing people on the show and some amazing conversations. I can't get into which one is the best. Some of them are names that people recognize. Some of them are people that nobody has ever heard of. But this, especially from a father standpoint, is one of the most impactful. It went in a direction I didn't necessarily know, expect, or see coming. And I'm simply going to be telling people, just, you got to see this. Yeah. And I know people that I'm going to send it to specifically.
Okay.
Some that have texted me while we're sitting here just to tell them, you need to see this. And they are not all in the special needs community.
Yeah,
I like that.
What I mean?
It's a beautiful story. We're getting closer to the end, and we always said we wish it could go on another hour. Sean, ask some questions so we can,
Yeah, so we can do that, and then put our little stuff up regarding both the Den and Billy Footwear. But this is the phase in the show, Jamiel, where we will ask the following question. Our ability to change the world, and I've said this before, but I'm really anxious to hear your answer and perspective to this. Our ability to change the world is dependent upon our ability or our willingness to change ourselves. With that in mind, give us just one example of a thought or a belief that you once felt strongly, but now in no way, shape, or form believe to be true.
That no one loves me.
And come on, man.
Now, I discovered that, my Savior loves me, and He wants me to love on other people. So I always end a show or something, and I'll be like, I love you, because I really do. I don't care who you are. I don't care if we never meet each other ever in life. But if you're watching this right now, you hear me, but it's not me saying I love you. So,
you know why I got my finger up, Brian, don't you?
Yep.
If you look at my social media posts, the words that I end my post with, and it's because these words found me and chose me. I did not choose them. Matter of fact, I felt a little weird about I was going to end the response to the gentleman who's the author on the spectrum earlier. I was going to tell him the same thing, but I was like, we've never even communicated before, and I've never seen his profile. I might freak him out. But I always end my posts by saying, and I end the show by saying, if you're reading this, I love you. If you're watching this, I love you. And sometimes I might add more by telling people I don't care where you are. I don't care what you do. Don't care what you've done. Don't care who you know. But I love you. Yeah. And if you think about it, everybody deep down inside kind of really feels that way. Even the grouchy old man who lives at the end of the block that doesn't talk to anybody. Even the person that says outright, I hate people. If you're going to walk by and not let somebody die who's choking to death or been stabbed, you love that person. You might not want to take him in, but at the end of the day, we deny ourselves the fact that we all love each other in some way, shape, or form. Our ability to express it is determined by the size and the content of the holes which we have within, because we all got them, because imperfection is a part of the human experience. And speaking of experiences, I'm eternally grateful for this one here today.
Yeah, thank you, guys. Thank you.
It's a good one, man. There's a lot of nuggets in this, Jamiel, and what you're doing. Again, we feel blessed having this conversation. Definitely relatable, and for dads to be able to hear this conversation, hopefully that they can take some of this in, because a lot of times, to your point, dads try to fix everything. We try to be the solution. We try to answer, blame other folks, be angry. But the reality is, once you kind of take it is all about love, and it's a great way. It's how I usually end the show, by saying, empathy and love is more important now, almost more important now than ever. Have some empathy for the person that you see on the street, if you're passing on the sidewalk. You never know what that person's going through. So be empathetic. And if you look at the world through lenses of love, the world's just a better place. And so, thanking everybody. We don't have to go through all the thanks because we're running out of time. But thank you, Sean Hall. Thank you to Billy Footwear. Everybody who's listening on Facebook, catch us on our YouTube channel. If you want to send us an email, we are just2dads@gmail.com. And we're launching our Just Two Dads podcast website here very shortly. Jamiel, before we say goodbye, just going to throw it to Sean Hill. And I love you. So thank you for being here today.
I love you too, bro. Love you too. Thank you.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Sean
all
Francis.
I can say is just thank you, and thank you. Love
Thank
you as
you.
well. And
Love you
then,
too.
again, Billy Footwear, an amazing sponsor of the show. They make adaptive footwear for those that are disabled. You click on the link that you find in the spot in the show notes, and you'll get 10% off your purchase price. And they have a new relationship with an artist who's fantastic and incredible. We've also included the link for our men's group known as the Den, a safe place for men to gather virtually. Jamiel has inspired me to have that become something live in person one day, a little further down the road. But Brian has a hard time keeping up with my ideas and trottling me, because I got more things that pop in the brain that can come out at a time. But just remember, questions are more powerful than statements. Let us be more childlike and less childish. Give more empathy and less judgment. And wherever you are within the sound of this voice, we love you. Thank you so very, very much.
Yes, we do.
Thank you, Jamiel. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, guys.